We spend about a third of our lives doing it. But what if I told you that for most of human history, sleep looked absolutely nothing like the solid 8-hour block we all strive for? Yeah, no alarms, no late night phone scrolling, just a completely different rhythm. And honestly, understanding this lost history might just change how you think about your own sleep for good.
And really, this gets to the very heart of it. If you've ever found yourself wide awake at 3 a.m., feeling like you're failing at sleep, this isn't about you doing something wrong. It's about a much bigger, much more interesting question. Have we forgotten how to sleep? Or have we just built a world that's not designed for the way we're supposed to rest?
You know that feeling, right? That jolt of anxiety when you wake up in the dead of night. It's so common. We've all had it drilled into us that the goal is a perfect, uninterrupted 8 hours. Anything less feels like you've messed up. But what if that whole idea, that pressure, is actually pretty new? To figure this out, we have to rewind the clock a bit. A historian named Roger Eckerch was digging through all these old diaries and court records, and he started noticing something odd. References to a way of sleeping that was completely different from ours today, long before the Industrial Revolution changed everything. He kept finding evidence for something called biphasic sleep. Now, the idea is pretty simple, but it's also kind of profound. For our ancestors, sleep wasn't one solid chunk. Nope, it was split into two separate parts, with a calm, quiet period of being awake right in the middle of the night. So here's what that actually looked like. People would have their first sleep not long after the sun went down. Then they'd wake up for an hour or two around midnight. And this wasn't a time for tossing and turning. It was a normal, totally accepted part of the night, a time for thinking, for praying, or just being with family. And after that, they'd drift off again for their second sleep. Okay, so it's really important to be clear here. This is a fascinating historical theory, but not all scientists are convinced. Some argue that these old texts might just be describing the normal brief awakenings that we all have. The scientific community is still debating it, which honestly just makes the whole thing even more interesting. So it's pretty clear our sleep history is way more complicated than we thought. Now let's zoom out even further and look at our deep evolutionary biology. Because when we compare ourselves to our closest animal relatives, our primate cousins, a really stark difference pops out. And this chart just lays it out so clearly. Anthropologists who study modern hunter-gatherer groups, people whose lifestyles are much closer to our ancestors, found that humans sleep a lot less than other primates. A chimp might clock in around 11 hours, while we're averaging closer to 7. So why? Why do we sleep so much less? Well, it seems like evolution made a kind of deal, a trade-off. Fewer hours sleeping meant more hours for telling stories around the fire, for building social bonds, and for staying safe from predators in the dark. But, like any trade-off, this amazing advantage came with a biological price tag. To understand that cost, we need to peek inside our brains during the deepest stages of sleep, because that's when this incredible thing happens. It's like the brain's night cleaning crew comes on shift, and it's a process we really, really don't want to interrupt. The official name for this is the glymphatic system. Basically, think of it as the brain's garbage disposal service. While you're in that deep, deep sleep, it kicks into high gear, flushing out all the metabolic junk and toxins that build up in your brain while you're awake. And here's the potential downside of that evolutionary deal we made. Shorter sleep schedules could mean less time for this deep cleaning process. Now, some researchers are exploring a possible link between this reduced cleanup time over a lifetime and a higher risk for neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. Okay, so we've got this ancient biology, these deep evolutionary patterns, and then we crash it headfirst into our very modern world. This is where the story really gets wild. For almost all of human history, our lives were governed by the sun. When it got dark, we rested. Simple. But as you can see here, that changed dramatically and incredibly fast. With gas lamps, then light bulbs, and now the smartphone in our pocket, we've basically erased the night. And here's the direct impact that has on our biology. Natural darkness is a signal to our brain to start producing melatonin, the sleep hormone. But the bright artificial light from our screens and light bulbs hits our eyes and does the exact opposite. It suppresses melatonin, essentially tricking our ancient brains into thinking it's still the middle of the day. So the issue isn't really that technology is evil or bad. It's just that our inventions have moved at lightning speed, while our evolution moves at a snail's pace. Our biology is still running on ancient software, and it just hasn't had time to get the update for our 24/7, always-on world.
Which, of course, brings us all the way back to that big question. When you factor in our complex history, our evolutionary quirks, and our super modern lives, what does a natural night of sleep even look like anymore?
The truth is, science doesn't have one simple, neat answer for us. Is it that two-part sleep from our ancestors? Is it the solid 8-hour block we've been told to chase? Or is natural sleep something much more flexible, something personal that's shaped by our culture and our own individual needs?
And that leads to what might be the single most important takeaway in all of this. This quote just nails it. Our bodies evolved for sleep, our society did not. We are biological creatures who need to rest, living inside a culture that is designed to never stop. So I want to leave you with this thought. The next time you find yourself staring at the ceiling in the middle of the night, instead of getting frustrated, maybe just get a little curious. Because maybe the problem isn't that you're broken. Maybe the problem is that we expect one rigid, one-size-fits-all pattern of sleep to work for every single one of us.